Hey, everybody. Welcome. How's it going? My name is Michael Whittle, and I'm really excited to just cover some stuff that I actually think is genuinely going to help you really practically wrap your head around how you and your team are using AI, and just honestly grateful and honored to spend an hour with us. So hope that your day is going good so far, and we are really excited to jump into this. So let's go ahead and jump into this here. If I haven't met you, my name is Michael Whittle, and I am the VP of AI here at Subsplash. Also founded a company called Pulpit AI, and we joined Subsplash about a year and a half ago, and have just had the most amazing time working with the team, and just so blessed to be able to be a part of what Subsplash is doing to help build the church. My background is kind of being an entrepreneur, but also have been building a local church for about 20 years, been a pastor, church planter in Los Angeles for 15 years, and now in Franklin, Tennessee. And I'm just really passionate about how we can leverage and use AI as pastors and church leaders to just help disciple our congregation, to help build our church, and to help grow and build our people. Really excited about all the technology can do, but also just really understand people have questions, and there is a lot to navigate. And so really just excited to talk through. I feel like everywhere I go, I'm talking to pastors who say, hey, we love these tools and we love the opportunity that they present, but what are some guardrails? How should my staff be using it? How should our team be using it? And so that's what we're going to talk about here today. So before we jump in, I would love to hear from you. A poll is going to pop up in the chat, and we'd just love to know, like, how are you and your team currently leveraging AI? I know a lot of people are using it for content creation, data analysis, even just asking basic questions, sermon prep and research. So please just let us know there in the chat how you are currently leveraging AI. Awesome. Some good stuff. Let's see here. Let me click and let me see what. Okay, so we've got content creation, is a big one. Data analysis is another big one. Cool. Well, many of you are already using it, which is really, really exciting. So let's jump into this thing. Where did my my notes go here? Hang on one second. Oh, there we go. There it is. I lost it for a second. Okay. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We are going to talk about the creation mandate. So the idea first and foremost here is, before we start using these tools, what is a basic theology that we need to have around these tools? How do we think about it? What do we think the Bible says about how to use tools like this? And just light theologically, right? Before we can practically implement anything, we really want to know how we're supposed to think about this. The other thing we're going to do is talk about some of the hidden risks. Hey, what are the risks in using AI, some of the different tools that you have, some of the different tools you can use? What are the risks? What are the risks in having staff and team use AI without any pre-built kind of framework or policy? And then really, what does faithful implementation look like? Like, as pastors and leaders and preachers of the gospel and disciplers of people, what does it look like to implement this technology in a faithful way, not taking away any of the God-given gifts and talents and giftings that you have, but really using AI to augment those and build upon those. And then we're going to spend some time doing a Q&A. So firstly, before we jump into this, just want to let you know what our mission is here at Subsplash. And as I mentioned, my company joined Subsplash about a year and a half ago, and I have just been so impressed and blessed by the mission of Subsplash. People that really do live it out, love Jesus, build a local church. And so our mission is to glorify God, proclaim Jesus is Lord by building a great company that drives for humility, innovation, and excellence to delight billions of people on the Subsplash platform. And I can just say, as someone who's been here for a year and a half, I have seen these values just kind of work in every single way through the whole team and their interactions with churches, and have learned so much since I've been here. So just a bit about our platform. So since we started Pulpit AI and joined with Subsplash, we've had about 300,000 sermons uploaded and process. So we've been working with pastors on in and around this subject of AI really since kind of the summer of 2023. Subsplash gets the privilege of serving over 20,000 churches. And has been around serving the local church for over 20 years. Currently have about 10,000 churches using Pulpit AI. So it's in all kind of that experience and that heart that we're really excited to kind of just roll out some thoughts and ideas and frameworks around what faithful AI use in the church looks like. So a really interesting stat just came out. So Exponential did a survey with church leaders here recently. And what was really interesting was that they found that 91% of church leaders support AI use in ministry, which has grown significantly even just over the last couple of years. So what's really cool to see is that pastors and church leaders are coming around to the idea that, hey, if used properly, this is a technology that really can be helpful and useful for building church and spreading the gospel. Here's what's really interesting, though, right? If 91% support and believe in the use of AI for ministry, only 6% have a formal policy for it, right? So what that essentially means is your staff, your team, they're already using AI, right? They're using ChatGPT, they're using Claude, they're generating content, they're pasting in meeting notes, maybe even uploading some sensitive information. And so right now, most churches and staffs have zero guardrails at all around how AI is being used. So that's really what we want to talk about today. Before we do that, though, I do want to talk about why does an AI policy even matter for churches? Like, what's the point? Why is it necessary to spend the time to build this out? And I think the reality is if we don't define how AI is used in our ministry, right, your team is going to figure it out on their own, right? They're going to figure out their own tools that maybe weren't built with your values in mind. They're going to be doing things on AI that maybe you as the pastor and the leader don't really want AI to be used for. And so honestly, it's really just about saying, hey, here's who we are. Here's what we believe about people and technology, and here's how we want to use these tools in a way to reflect what our church believes. So we think it's just really important to start wrapping our heads around this. So firstly, let's just talk quickly theologically. How are we supposed to think about this, right? We talk a lot at Subsplash about the creation mandate, right? In how we think about building all of our tools, right? Genesis 1 and 2, we know that God calls humanity to fill the earth and subdue it and keep it. And we know that throughout Scripture, from Noah's Ark to the tabernacle, God's people have been builders. They have taken the tools of their day and built them to move forward the story of God and the story of Jesus. And so that means that AI isn't some threat. It is not some, we say, like alien interloper that God knows nothing about, right? God's not surprised by AI and the fact that it's here. It really is part of, we believe, the means that God has given humanity to fulfill his purposes, again, as a tool. So how do we fulfill the mandate God gave us as a technology company, right? Well, we build AI tools for the church because we really do believe that it is part of our calling as image bearers. We want to fill the church with a growth mindset. How do we take these tools and use that to multiply the talents that God has given us, right? So the question isn't just how do we stay safe with AI, right? But it's how can we faithfully use it to build, multiply, and extend the work of the kingdom in the context that God has given us to extend. One thing that we really believe is AI should amplify human beings, not completely replace them, right? So AI is a tool to fulfill the creation mandate, right? But one thing obviously we all know is that it lacks a soul, right? It can't pray, it can't repent, and it certainly cannot replace the embodied presence of a pastor. One thing we say a lot right now is we actually believe that the ushering, that sort of the age of AI only makes the physical presence of the pastor more important. The person who can administer the sacraments, who can pray for people, who can visit people in hospitals, who can know people's names. AI can't do any of that. And so for us, the core design principle is, hey, if we're looking at these tools and we are building these tools, we want to amplify the work of a person and not replace completely, right, a person. So some other ways we think about it here is, like I mentioned earlier, the pastor is irreplaceable, right? We know this, but pastoral authority rests on knowing, living, and exercising the truth in the context of a real community, right? An algorithm or a timeline cannot simulate that. And so, again, one of our core values is our AI tools must push people towards embodied community, not away from it. Push people toward embodied community and not away from it. Okay, so let's talk about some of the hidden risks, because as great as we believe this technology is, the reality is there's some very obvious risks, and then there's some risks that most pastors and church leaders aren't fully thinking about. So let's jump in and talk through some of those. But before we do, I just want to ask, drop into the chat, like let us know, what risks do you see with implementing AI? Is there anything that you are worried about? Anything that's top of mind for you as a risk as you think about implementing AI into your ministry? I see someone say worship songs. No. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Data privacy. Yeah. Cognitive offloading. Yeah. People not studying. Yeah. These are all real risks. Security with people's information, laziness, like that. Justin, that's great. Yeah, these are all so true and relevant. Replacing human judgment and agency. Yeah, false interpretation, probably. Yeah, so many of these are coming through right now. I saw one, training new ministers not thinking for themselves. I love that. Cool. Well, let's just jump into some risks that we kind of have identified and things that we continue to see as we talk to churches really all over the world and how they're using AI. So the Harvard just released a human flourishing study recently, and they found that mainstream AI models average a 48 out of a 100 on faith-related questions, right? They replace God with higher power or prayer with mindfulness. And this is not a bug. This is a feature that is built into the system that was built, right? These models, as we all know, were trained on secular internet data. And so what can happen is somebody can ask a question about anxiety or Bible verses around anxiety, and what they're going to get is just a general response of what the general internet has to say about what the Bible says about theology. And so oftentimes these LLMs can sound very authoritative. On the surface, they can actually sound Christian, but there is actually no biblical worldview or local theological context around it. So it's really, really important to understand that some of the risks are the fact that these LLMs do have biased views of the Bible and discipleship. Okay. Another one is the erosion of pastoral authority, right? Pastors have always been known as people who have information to give to their people through Bible teaching. And I think what a lot of pastors are worried about, and the reality is now our people have all of this information in their pockets 24/7 to interact with. And so the reality is that if we just, I think someone said, kind of lay off our study and our prayer and the work of a pastor to AI, that then very much does erode our pastoral authority. Replacement of spirit-filled inspiration. I think somebody said, I saw a comment earlier that said training new ministers to think for themselves. And I think that's the same thing about, being replacing things like sermon prep. I remember as a young pastor seeing the pastors I looked up to spend so much time in prayer and discernment and study to get a word from scripture that was for their church. And I think as we said, the replacement of this is something that we really do risk losing. And then I would again echo what somebody said here: misuse of private data. Again, taking any private data, whether that be church member data, giving, pastoral care, anything that we upload to these LLMs directly, that information gets ingested by that LLM. So we've got to be really careful about what we do there. And then allowing primary secular voices to build and train AI tools. So those are just some of the risks that we see, and we are having conversations with churches all around the country on. So what does faithful implementation actually look like? Like, what does it look like to take this tool that certainly does have some risks, but also certainly does create a lot of opportunity, and faithfully implement that into our churches and our staffs? The first thing really starts with alignment, and it's just getting clear on your values before you pick your tools, right? Our technology is always downstream from our theology. And so as we think about this as church pastors and leaders, before we start trying out any tools, we go, hey, what do we believe about this, right? What are our values? How will we use this, and how won't we? What do we believe theologically around what we are supposed to do with technology like this? And so I just want to talk about, like 3 practical first steps that I think you can take when you leave today. If you're having these conversations, like we kind of talked about earlier, your staff is definitely using AI, right? They are using these tools. They are trying these tools. So here's just a few things that we think would be really helpful for you to do. Number 1, that's just review your values. Right? What does your church actually believe about technology, human dignity, and pastoral authority? And does your staff and team know what your church believes about it? Right? Number 2 is uncover existing AI use. Right. And I would just say, go to your team, not with no judgment, but just inventory. Ask people, hey, what AI tools are you using? How are you using it? What productivity gains are you seeing from using it? What are some tools that you're using? And I think the reality there is you just need to know how to govern. You need to know what's happening before you govern it well, right? So what are your creative teams using? What are your teaching teams, finance, pastoral care? What are they using and how are they using it? Just to kind of give you a lay of the land and an understanding before you can start to kind of work through how this is going to look in your church. And then number 3, I would say you want to establish your own church AI policy. And this isn't just a template that you copy and paste from somewhere. I think it's got to reflect your convictions, your community, your theology. We've actually built a toolkit that you can download actually here, as you can see on our next slide, which really is just a toolkit for you and your church and your team to walk through these questions. Hey, how do we want to use this? What is a policy going to look like? What do we use and what don't we use? So would love you to go ahead and download that. You can download that. It's a great conversation to have with your team and with your leaders on how to begin to think about implementing these tools in your church. Okay, well, since the beginning of Subsplash, honestly, the vision has been to equip the church with tools for today. Right? We want to be innovative. We want to be humble, and we want to be excellent. And this started with church apps at the launch of the iPhone, and then digital giving, and so many other tools. And we're now really focused on, again, equipping the church with AI. So I want to invite up my friend Ryan, who is an amazing team member here at Subsplash, to just jump on and talk a little bit about some of the different AI tools for churches, how they can be used, and how we're seeing churches all around the country use these tools. So let's welcome Ryan up this afternoon.
Hey, how's it going, guys? Yeah, thanks so much, Michael. I'm Ryan, one of the product managers here at Subsplash, and I'm really excited to talk about how we have been exploring how AI can help solve a number of problems that all of the churches and ministries we interact with every day have. And again, making sure that we're emphasizing well thought out ways to amplify and not replace. So we've got a couple of things to talk about. And the first thing is actually a new product that my team personally has been working on. We're really excited to talk about it. We're talking about Trends AI. This is a new feature that we've been working on that is helping our churches understand their data better through AI. And there's a couple of things that are exciting, but also a couple of things to watch out for whenever you're using AI tools. And we wanted to make sure that we built in faithful implementation into Trends from the ground up. So let's talk about one of the ways we're making sure we're utilizing this powerful tool responsibly. We've talked to a number of churches who are already using AI tools to help them understand, the dozens, if not hundreds of different data points that they see every single week when they're trying to understand, what is their congregation doing? How is giving going? Are things growing, shrinking? Really trying to make sure that they can monitor how well their efforts are bearing fruit when they have a congregation that's hard to keep track of and know by name. But one of the problems we see with using just any general AI tool is that public AI models train on the data you give them. And when you're trying to understand your congregation better, you've got sensitive data like donation history, personally identifiable information like names and emails. And oftentimes, especially if you're using Subsplash, you might be storing confidential questions, some of your congregation's deepest, most profound moments being stored to make sure you can track them and understand it when people get baptized, maybe when people get saved. But we don't want to make sure that that stays within your database and isn't used to train something else, because that is, as you can see, definitely both a breach of pastoral trust and legal liability. So we're really excited to bring a tool like AI for data analysis directly into Subsplash, and we can make sure that there is no training being passed off to any third-party model through tools like this. But let's talk about why trends in general. Well, I'm just going to briefly touch on some of these items here. You're seeing we've got a ton of different customizable chart types, dozens that you can be used, all funneled into one consolidated dashboard. And we found that when we talked with churches who liked using data to make data-informed decisions, pastors and executive teams were often spending upwards of 4, 6, 10, 12 hours a week just trying to get a handle of what's actually happening in their ministry. And so we took it upon ourselves to build a tool that is really servicing that need. How can we help cut down on the time it takes for you and your team to understand your congregation well, and maybe even help uncover new insights? Every church has a unique congregation, calling, and context, and we want to make sure that it takes as little time as little time as possible to understand what's going on so you can get back to pastoring. So we're really excited about a tool like this. We're able to pull all of your ministry's data into one place. We're starting with giving, people data, events and attendance, even groups data, all capable of living in a unified dashboard. Things that refresh daily can be drilled down in for better details, with, again, dozens of chart types. Really, it's limitless what you can do to make sure that you can track what matters most. And AI is incredibly helpful at building those customizable dashboards without requiring a data science degree. You're able to use natural language to explore trends within your database, generate charts that help you see them visually instantly, and even use AI to help surface deeper insights, again, without needing that really unique data expertise. And we're seeing clients do amazing things, helping them understand, new recurring giving trends, helping them identify families that are regular attenders or maybe dropping off that might need some additional pastoral care, saving time segmenting complex data for different campus pastors. It's been really, really fun watching how churches are using this to amplify their effectiveness. But we've got a couple of other tools that I'm going to talk about in a second. But just to let you know, if you are interested in trends, and this sounds exciting, but maybe even intimidating, when you're checking this out, make sure to have a chat with your customer success manager or our team, because we do offer an onboarding package to make sure that you can learn how to use tools like this well. And in scenarios where you feel like you've got a lot of custom charts that you want to build quickly, you might even be able to work with our team to have us build them for you. We really want to make sure that this becomes an asset that amplifies your ministry, makes things easier, and doesn't become a burden and just a bunch of new buttons you have to press every single week. So if you want to check that out, I want to make sure that you're aware. If you're watching this right now, we do want to invite you to take advantage of a $500 off offer on the onboarding fee. So you might see a button in the bottom left corner. If you're interested, press that Let's Chat button. But this isn't the only tool that we've released that is using AI. And I would love to talk to you about this next one, but we've got the founder here with us. So I'm going to hand it back to you, Michael. Do you want to tell us about Pulpit AI?
Yeah, Ryan. Thanks, man. That's so great. Yeah, so, Pulpit AI really just came from this idea that we believe that the voice of the local church pastor is the most important voice in our culture today. And, for me, it really was, how do we take the work that the pastor does, right? In the world of, so many voices that our people interact with and hear from online, how can we help churches just take that thing that is so unique and special to that community, which is the sermon, and help pastors and churches repurpose that content to interact with their church throughout the week? Our whole idea was, if we could just add one extra engagement point from that sermon throughout the week, would that help churches disciple their people? Would that help pastors just continue to disciple, Monday to Saturday. And so our biggest passion, again, is not putting words into the mouth of the pastor. For us, the whole goal here is we extract the content from the pastor's own voice rather than generating kind of new or generic theology. So what Pulpit AI simply does is it just takes your sermon, an audio, video, or text file of your sermon, and turns that into 20 plus pieces of content for corporate communications, small group guides, discussion questions, devotionals, where there's a chat function there where you can even take that sermon and based upon that sermon, create domain specific devotionals for moms and dads and Gen Z and youth and young adults, single moms, whatever that might be. How do we take that sermon and personalize that for that person to interact with throughout the week? We're also able to edit sermon clips. I know many churches, as much as we would love to have big media teams, one of the things we love about AI is it really does democratize the process of being able to produce media. So you're able to scroll through a transcript of your sermon, highlight any piece of that, and turn that into a clip for social media. And we also give you some AI recommended clips there as well, which again are pulled directly from the pastor's sermon. And so again, all we want to do with this is how do we take the sermon that the pastor just prayed and prepped and studied and preached and help them take that and help that go beyond Sunday. And so that's one of the things that we are really passionate about.
Yeah, incredible. Pulpit is the best.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting here, as we've been talking to so many more churches that have been using Pulpit AI, is we're seeing churches save on average 10 to 12 hours every week. And so maybe that is the person on your team that listens through the sermon and creates small group discussion guides for that week. Maybe it's just the social media team or a content person, whoever that may be. We're really finding that people are saying, hey, we can get this content out much faster. And the people that were doing that work can now go spend time with people or do other, really ministry embodied, people focused tasks that really do help build the church. So it's been really cool to see what this has unlocked with churches.
Yeah, that's so awesome. Yeah, we love to see time back to keep being pastors. It's incredible. Hey, just a quick reminder, you might see a pop-up on your screen. If you're interested in trying Pulpit, Pulpit's a really easy product to just check out, no cost at all to trial it. You might see a button down there. If you're curious, make sure to take advantage of those 2 free credits. But hey, we've got additional cool things here. Anything else you want to say on this, Michael, before we jump into additional features?
No, that was great. Just would love for you to jump on and try it out. You get 2 free credits and, let us know how it's being helpful.
Incredible. Well, hey, yeah, that's not it. We've also got some two features that I want to talk about today. One of the things you might have seen if you're paying attention to what Subsplash has been working on over the last few months is our workflows tool. It's really cool. It's really powerful. It's a wonderful way to help make sure that all of the different tools and ministries that you're using here at Subsplash can stay connected. And it's a great way to make sure that your more complex tasks that have multiple steps, like making sure, a new guest gets invited to a group, something like that. We want to make sure that you have a powerful tool that can manage all of that. And we discovered as we were exploring this new powerful workflows tool, clients that we work with are really excited to take advantage of it, but it's really hard to figure out step 1. How do you go from a complex, comprehensive idea in your head and just start building it? And this is something that we found AI is really good at. And so we enabled AI workflow creation. It's super helpful. It's really, really powerful. Start with a really simple prompt. We've seen people say things like create a workflow to manage our prayer requests, or build a workflow that starts after someone attends our annual marriage conference. And it's going to give you a first pass, checking out all of the various steps and give you a chance to review. So you can start, maybe it nails it on the first try, but more often than not, this is going to get you really 80% of the way there. So you can get back in the driver's seat and customize things to look exactly the way you need to. It's been a really helpful way to, again, cut down on the time it takes to create a meaningful workflow. But that's not all. We're also working on AI people search. We want to make sure that understanding all of the various things that your people are doing is more accessible than ever. It's coming soon. We're working hard on it. You'll be able to see it really, really soon. You'll be able to use natural language to query all of your people data. And we've been experimenting with awesome ways to see new things like everyone who has a birthday this month. I know everyone's probably planning a great party. Make sure you can identify those people faster, or even adults who haven't been baptized. All sorts of ways of mixing and matching criteria to make sure that you can find your people faster than ever before, making sure nobody slips through the cracks. And trust me, being able to combine AI people search and workflow creation is going to be a game changer. We're excited to see how both of those things can help you see your people better than ever before. All righty. Well, hey, this is almost the end of my time here, but I did just want to remind, we've been talking a lot about some of the things that Subsplash does over the next few minutes, but at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that you walk away with tools so you can know how you and your team want to faithfully implement the use of AI tools. So be sure to download that policy toolkit. It's got a ton of helpful resources to make sure that you and your team are having the right conversations at the right time to amplify your ministry.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Well, hey, let's have some Q&A. I would love to hear some questions from the chat. I know we've got some here in the Q&A section. I would love to just know what are some questions that you have. Okay, here's one. We're trying to leverage AI, which, by the way, jump in, Ryan. Anything you got to say? Go ahead.
Yeah.
Please jump in. We're trying to leverage AI to move our volunteers from isolated admin tasks to human-facing, people-oriented tasks. Any thoughts on where the line and balance is? For example, should we automate social media design through an agent flow, quicker standardized design, or let our people gifted with design continue to design, right? Which would be slower, more revision needs. Yeah, my response here, my kind of initial thought is I think that's where those values and those conversations with your team, what do you value, right? I know a lot of pastors and churches who don't mind a quicker, more standardized design. And then I know churches who really lean into that creativity and content. So maybe you're a church that has somebody who is gifted and loves to serve in that way. Absolutely. So I think that's what's so important about having these conversations, right? Is, hey, where do we sit? And I think these conversations need to be revisited probably a few times a year, because just like you said, we don't want to remove somebody doing something that they feel that God has gifted them to do. So I think so many of that is individual context. What do you value? What does your team value? And what season are you in as a church? You know? And so, yeah, I would say that that's probably kind of the way to think about that. Ryan, any thoughts there?
No, I think that's incredible. I think we're super aligned in making sure that, if there's a task that is costing you hours and it's keeping you from doing what God has called you to do, it's a great opportunity to explore how tools like AI or otherwise could help speed that up to make sure that you are doing what God has uniquely gifted you as an embodied member of the church to do.
Great. Yeah, that's awesome. Question from Dylan. Do you know of any LLMs that are trained specifically for ministry use, i.e. ChatGPT for Christians? If not, are there any models that are more or less trusted as a ministry resource? So I don't know of any that I have used enough to kind of feel like I could endorse and say, yes, this is or this isn't. I think the reality is anything that's being built right now is built on top of a ChatGPT or an Anthropic model or Grok or Gemini or anything like that. So I think a lot of it is the data that's sort of the data set that you're using. So I can't give you any specific ones that are specifically for Christians just because I haven't used one that I would, kind of endorse or recommend. But I do think models that are more or less trusted as a ministry resource. Again, so much of AI, I think, is you're going to get out what you put in. And so I think, some of the different models are really good at not adding anything. Let's say you upload a sermon or you're having some kind of a conversation. I do think just in my own personal study time and ministry prep time, I certainly have tried to play around with some of the different models to just see, hey, what's it going to give me back? And I will say that in every single one of those scenarios, I have seen pretty significant errors, whether it be quotes attributed to a certain theologian that theologian never said, or even twists on scripture. So I wish I could give you a better answer there. I have not used one specifically that is created specifically for Christians. But I think with both ChatGPT and Anthropic, from my understanding, I think ChatGPT is a bit less ideological, maybe than just using Anthropic just like right out of the box. But again, what I've found is if you prompt it in that direction, it's going to go where you want it to go. I just wouldn't fully trust any kind of quote or, kind of like theological commentary around what you're studying.
Yeah, for sure. And just if I could jump in, right? Like one of the things that we think a lot about as a product and an engineering organization, obviously at a company that serves churches, is this a lot. Like what can we do when we're building something to ensure that either the tool is not trying to make any assumptions or assertions around theological topics to keep you as the expert, or when it's doing something like, for example, trends, trying to understand data that is specific to your congregation. We have layers of coaching and context that we set in the middle ourselves, because we're the ones that are sort of training the responses. And there's a lot of really technical tools that we get to use to do that. Maybe we don't have time to get into today, but we definitely see it as our responsibility to make sure that if you're using a tool like Trends, it's not going to assume that a donor is a customer, right? It's just really distinct phrasings that are incredibly important to make sure that any of the data you're seeing is truly looking at your congregation the same way you do.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I would add to that, even, with Pulpit AI, we've done a lot of work in the background to make sure that what is the content that is shown is a reflection of what you preached, right? And so for us, it really is a big deal to go, we don't want to add or remove anything from your voice and from your theology. We really want to do our best to just extract and make your voice the thing that we create content from. So, okay, cool. Next question from Dan. Should AI be used in sermon prep, and does that usurp the Holy Spirit? That is a fantastic question, Dan. I think, listen, as somebody who absolutely loves teaching and preaching, who has studied it, who absolutely feels like it's an honor to get to do it. I think that there are ways in which AI can be used. I think, obviously it never should replace prayer, study, asking the Holy Spirit to, share with you and reveal to you what direction he wants you to go and what he wants you to say. So, I think when it comes to anything that writes the sermon for you, I think anything that replaces the holy work of preparing a sermon for the church. I think I have seen some really unique ways in which pastors have used it to help with sermon prep. So some of that is just clarity. So on Pulpit AI, for example, you can upload, let's say if you're a manuscript writer, and just say, hey, where are my points not clear? Or, hey, can you help give me an analogy or a transition statement? So I think anything that has to do with maybe the basics of communication, I think that is really helpful. And I know a lot of pastors use it for that. Like once they've done the study, once they've written the thing, to kind of upload it and just say, hey, where's it clear? Where's it not clear? Another big thing that I've seen pastors do is like analogies, or stories. Like I was talking actually to a pastor last week. We were actually at a conference in Seattle with about 250 pastors and leaders talking about this specific topic. And I was talking to a pastor and he said, man, I tend to be really not so practical, and I'm not really good at coming up with like practical illustrations. And so, sometimes I can just be long-winded. So he's like, so I've been having AI help me just come up with basic practical application. And he was like, and the church is loving it because I'm kind of now not so heady all the time. So I think there's ways to do that. I think another thing that we've seen is, pastors basically being able to gather all of their sermon library data. So let's say you've been preaching 10, 15, 20 years, getting all of that in one single place and being able to search, hey, when did I preach about, Romans chapter 5? And when did I last use this story? So almost taking that pastor's brain and creating kind of like a second brain, so to speak. So again, I think like anything that augments but doesn't replace, I think is a good thing to do. That being said, I do know that sermon writing is a really holy thing for people. And I know everybody has their process. And so I think so much of that comes down to personal conviction, what does your local church and your leadership say? And I think it's important to continue revisiting those because, as someone said earlier, we don't want to train speakers and preachers, especially young ones, to not have to think through and wrestle through what it means to write a sermon. Cool. Ray, with Trends, would our data be sent anywhere via API, and how do you secure that? Ryan, I'm going to let you answer
Love to jump in on that one. Yeah, very cool. So just to peek behind the curtain, Trends is looking at all of the same data lake that the entire product is running off of. So it's not having to go anywhere to like achieve that data, call anything to see it. The same data that you're seeing on your screen when you're interacting with our event people, giving whatever platform. Now that we have this new tab, it's the same exact source. So we keep it secure the same way we keep any of your existing data secure. And all of the logic to try to understand what you're asking and reveal those answers doesn't actually rely as much on kind of parsing through and sending the specific logistics somewhere else. It's really just a reasoning engine that's trying to interpret your natural language into a library of, tokens and data points that it understands more generally. So it's a really cool way. Like it would be awesome at some point, definitely chat with your CSM to see it in action. It's really cool to watch, but it is all just as secure as any of your data has already been this entire time here at Subsplash.
Great. All right. What do we got next? Okay, I'm a youth leader, and I see students using AI to search and ask questions about Jesus. So I'm feeling a bit behind. How do I have conversations with younger generations about AI while learning it myself? That is a great question. I think the big thing is helping people understand what it is and what it isn't, but also, not rejecting it all out, right? Like you said, students are using AI to search and ask questions. I read recently that this has been maybe 5 or 6 months ago, that it was something to the effect of like well over 65% of Gen Z has had some kind of therapeutic adjacent interaction with an LLM every single month, meaning they had some kind of conversation with an LLM about something they're going through or a question that they may have. And so I think the first thing to do is understand that, hey, our students and our adults, frankly, are having these kind of conversations with their AI of choice, right? So I think really kind of helping them develop a kind of theology and a thought process around that, helping them understand like, hey, if you're asking AI these questions, just know here's how this thing was built. This was not built from a foundation of a Christian worldview. And so I think, and obviously with students, the more that they use it in school and work and all that kind of stuff, it's only going to become more prevalent. But I think the big thing is your voice now matters more than ever before, right? And so it's really just going, hey, I know that you're going to search this stuff, helping them remember it's not always correct, and it doesn't know you, and it doesn't have your context in mind, and it really is just giving you a basic answer based upon a bunch of data from across the internet. And so just helping them know, hey, this is great for like practical information. But when it comes to theology, when it comes to specific things they may be going through, the reality is we all know discipleship and formation happens human to human. And so I think it's just helping them go, hey, just the way that you would Google something, go ahead, use AI for that. But when it comes to something that requires relationship, make sure that those relationships are there. And then I would say, how do you have conversations about learning it yourself? I think it's just being open and saying you are learning it. I think just even saying, I know it's here and I'm learning it is half the battle, because at least you're not saying this thing is awful, don't use it, be afraid of it, right? So I think almost just the posture of, hey, we are kind of entering a new world when it comes to this, and we're going to do it together. We may not always get it right, but I think not putting our head in the sand and helping our people understand we do realize what a big shift this has been in our culture. And so we're not going to ignore it. We're going to go on this journey with them, and we're going to help develop a theology for them around how to use it and how not to use it. Okay, as an admin that reports to a council, they ask if I'm able to generate certain reports from households, and in addition, giving a report that we can only extrapolate via CSV manually. which takes a bunch of time to do.
Yeah, I'd love to jump in. This, Alicia, it sounds like the problem that you're describing is exactly why Trends AI was an exciting feature for us to build. So we have, plugged in a ton of the data that's already available in Subsplash into a tool, are constantly working on adding more. And we even offer the ability for you to import your own things into the tool. And we want to make sure, I used to spend hours on spreadsheets doing very similar things for previous companies, for this one, even for churches, trying to make sure that you could just turn a list of dozens, hundreds, thousands of data points into some sort of simple visualization. And we find over and over again that churches, when they want to make data informed decisions, again, at the end of the day, you're relying on the Holy Spirit to actually dictate the direction of your church. But you want to use some data to make sure that you're making informed next steps with that direction. There's always a pattern. You need to be able to gather all of this data into one place. You need to be able to understand it and manipulate it and to turn it into something that is actually parsable, readable. And that's typically going to be some sort of chart or visualization. And then you need to get all of the right people in the right room to have a conversation about that artifact and make a decision. Because if any of the data you're looking at is just sort of nice to see, you're wasting your time. If it's not actually informing how you continue to minister to your congregation better and better, then there's really no point. And so we wanted to make sure that all of the tools with Subsplash, they're already so good at helping you gather that data, had a new tool to help you turn all of that disparate data into something you could understand, which is what Trends is good for. It's taking all of those complex concepts, turning them into easy to understand charts, and then you and your team get to take over from there. Because you're the experts on what you should do with that data. You have your own unique context and calling. And really, we want to make sure that you are equipped to keep going, keep chasing after what God has called you to do faster, better than ever before. All righty. I think that's it, Michael.
All right. Is that it? Any more questions? We kind of worked through all of those. I think that is it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we got through a couple of great ones. There's a number that didn't get answered live, and we will definitely be following up with this recording.
Absolutely. Cool. Well, Ryan, thanks for being on, and everybody else, thank you so much for taking the time to be a part of this. Hopefully it was helpful. Please reach out with any questions. And again, please do download that AI policy toolkit to just better wrap your head around what that looks like. Again, we're here. Reach out to your contact at Subsplash, and they can answer any questions you may have. And don't forget about that $500 off on onboarding. And again, we're just grateful that you spent some time with us today to talk about and explore this topic. We're just grateful that you're here, and really honored to be able to serve you and your church. And we will talk to you soon. Have a great rest of the day.